Have you heard of this very powerful way of speaking is through speaking what is alive on the inside? And it's quite fascinating because when you see people do that, no matter what they end up saying, it becomes really nice to listen to. So someone can get up on stage and they just talk from the essence of what is basically living inside of them. And they capture your attention in a very special way because they're so authentic, they're so present in themselves that they could say almost anything and you would listen. And so often when we get on a stage or we present ourselves to other people, it's not what we do. Instead, we go into performance and we pretend, and we actually disconnect with our insides because we're thinking that our insides isn't what is interesting to people because we got to perform. But bringing that along on the journey to some extent is actually what makes something interesting. And I don't even know what I'm here to say. It's an exploration in what wants to come out. And that can also be very fascinating so often when we get uncertain on what to say, to just follow our inner guidance and actually practice that muscle in ourselves, because it's about surrendering and letting go of control and not really knowing what's coming and trusting ourselves and trusting that what wants to come is good enough. And I don't know about you, but it creates some discomfort on the inside because why should you listen to something that I haven't prepared? I'm not saying there isn't a time to practice, because of course we also need to practice. And before I'm recording this, I've read a lot of books, I've done a lot of practices, I've been practicing what I preach. I have really strong integrity on always practicing what I preach and not just pointing the finger and saying like, do this, do that, but really like, yeah, trying it out myself and also figuring out what is challenging, where does the nervous system come in, where does the humanity come in that makes it so hard sometimes to practice what we preach, to practice all of the theories that we know, even though we know that it would be great to do it. Why do we still not? So that's my curiosity, and it's also what I want to bring to the table, the humanity into business, the humanity into any relationship, and why we block ourselves and why we end up getting stuck, and why it's like, I really want to do this, but I always end up doing this, and like being curious about why does that happen. And very often it's stored in our nervous system and in our subconscious, so out of our control to some extent, but then again, not fully. And that's also relevant to the aliveness, because when we get nervous and when our nervous system gets triggered, often it blocks our aliveness. It blocks who we are, and we start performing unconsciously because it's what we think that people expect from us. This is the only way of doing it, and this is what people told me to do. But this is what feels better to me, but we keep going kind of back into this box that was given to us. So the aliveness, what is it that is alive inside you? And can you use that in any way? For example, if you want to be on a stage, if you want to express something challenging, if you want to achieve something, how can you use your internal aliveness to something, to allow it to be on your side? Because our insides can be nervous. We can feel, intensity in our bodies very often, in our chest, in our throat, in our stomach, all of the butterflies. But can we be present with that and use it in some way to connect to other people? So instead of seeing it as something that stands in the way of what we want to create, maybe it can actually be part of what we want to create. So to bring in the humanness of everything we do, because, you know, even though we're at work, we're there as people. It's not as if we would put aside like our human body when we're at work. So how can we still in a work situation bring our bodies with us? I find that that is very interesting. And I would say something that we don't necessarily practice, something that a lot of us tell us ourselves and have experienced wasn't safe, that it wasn't met in a good way. But I really believe that for our organizations and workplaces to function properly, we got to bring in the humanity of every process. I've been working a lot with business processes inside company, and I always saw that the lack of focus into the human aspect of a process was the big blockage. Because companies would invest a lot into a new IT tool, but it turned out that the old IT tool didn't work because they didn't invest into the training of the people and making sure that people understood it and that it was welcomed and actually practiced. So then they're like, oh, there's something wrong with the tool. We need to change the IT tool. And the same thing happened again. They invest a lot of money into the technical part of it. But again, you have the shit in, shit out problematic that, people actually don't necessarily want to use it. They don't know how to use it. They don't feel mastery. And we're still left with a culture that isn't making people thrive in their jobs. And I guess all of us know that what makes us actually thrive at our jobs is feeling mastery. It's what is motivating us, it's inspiring us, it makes us feel safe in the workplace, and especially also if it's safe to say, I don't master it, and I don't understand it, or I don't even like it, and being met in a safe way and being supported through this has so much to do with satisfaction at the job, and then of course also people's deliveries. Because if you're not satisfied in your job, if you don't feel safe, then you're not gonna exceed your expectations. You're not gonna bring out your talent. Because we live in a world where we're competing for the talent, but what does that even mean? Are companies actually able to bring out the talent in people? And are we creating workplaces and cultures that actually bring out the talent in an individual? And especially now in the younger generations and also in the older generations, they're very different. It's probably always been like that. But can we see the value of the older generations, the people that have maybe 10 to 20 years left in the workforce, and also the people coming in, the youth that has grown up in a very different era? Can we bring out the talent in these and also help them cooperate and understand each other and create curiosity between the generations? Because that is what I see that is really lacking, and there's a lot of frustration going on between these generations, and especially the older generation looking at the young generation as kind of wanting either to come in and just already know it all and have a leadership position and not walk the steps, and at the same time other managers that are frustrated that the younger people don't share their knowledge. So how can we create then a safe place where we communicate about the reason for this? Where does it come from? Why does this happen? How can we create a safe place for the youth to actually share how they need to be led and how to get out their talent, to meet them in an empowering way, to really believe that they know how they need to be managed, and the older generation to actually believe that they are capable of something and that they can learn from them. And at the same time, the younger generation also understanding that the older generation is just doing their best. They have a very different vocabulary. They grew up in a very different time. Most likely they're not racist, even though it sounds like it. So how can these nervous systems meet and these very different ways of being meet and see each other and understand each other? And that is what a workplace is. And that's what society is. It's what a family is. Do we manage to see each other and be curious about each other through these differences? You have the generations, but then you also have people coming from different cultures, different backgrounds, different climate. Create a climate and company and society that makes us curious on each other and get to know each other so that we can actually understand each other instead of just assuming and seeing the benefit of this curiosity, but also how challenging it actually is. Starting with ourselves and just seeing in ourselves, like how well do we manage to be curious towards a person that is so different to ourselves, that has a very different way of thinking. Can we relate to them, and can we even take them serious? Can we trust them? Can we believe that we have something to learn from them? Not just that they have something to learn from us, but that it's a mutual thing. I know that it can be really hard, it can be frustrating. Sometimes we just want people to listen to us and be like, oh, you just got to understand and you just got to do it my way. But then the listening skills and really believing that, oh, I have something to learn from you and you have something to learn from me, and this is how it always is. Even a child, we as adults can learn a lot from a child, even though they don't necessarily have a lot of knowledge, but they have other skills. They have a very pure way of being without any conditioning, so we can learn a lot from them. So always looking at this two-way dynamic of meeting each other. This is at least what I think is really beautiful and something I hope we can co-create and be curious about as a society and as corporations and as humans. I'm not saying it's easy. It can be quite tough. It can be scary because it means diving in where it's not an echo chamber, where people maybe disagree, and admitting that we don't know the full truth, admitting that we don't have full control, admitting that there's so much to the world that we don't understand yet. And I know that this can feel challenging for a lot of people. It has felt very challenging for me. I really love just having control and just telling people what to do. And more I'm just realizing that I don't know. I don't know it all. Admitting that there's so much I don't know. And I cannot fix the world on my own. And when I say it right now, it sounds silly, but seriously, when I worked in environmentalism, this was how I felt, that I had the responsibility of the world on my shoulder. And if I relaxed, it wouldn't be okay. I felt so much responsibility and needed to have control, and I knew it all. And now I'm realizing that, well, actually we're a lot of people in this world, and together we can create a lot of, but not if I sacrifice myself, not if I don't take care of myself. And it's the same for everyone in a company as well. Like, we cannot use up people like we're doing right now for the cause, because then people burn out and then they're out of the game for many years. So how can we create a system that makes people thrive in a sustainable way so that they have a capacity for a long time? Because it's a marathon. Our life is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And we try to sprint, but then we crash and we crash and we crash. And I guess some people need to meet that wall in order to start seeing the marathon, and that actually you can relax and you can't fix the world. We gotta cooperate. And that is a very different kind of skill set, to cooperate with maybe your enemy and find solutions together with someone you dislike and disagree with, instead of trying to push your way. Because the fact is, people don't listen when you don't listen. The only way that people can listen is when we manage to understand each other and actually talk. And that is very, very challenging. I know. It can be super triggering. It can be super scary. It can be super frustrating. But managing to believe that we can learn something about the people we dislike, and also that actually the people we dislike, even our enemies, most likely they are working towards something from their own values, from their own heart, something that they really care about. So trying to understand what is it that is driving them in the same way that we are being driven by something, instead of just assuming that people are bad people and being like, how can you do this? You're such a horrible person. You can start thinking, okay, what is actually driving this person? Why are they doing it? And stop saying you're a bad person, because if you feel that you do something out of good and people keep telling you you do it out of bad, but they're not curious about why you're doing it, it doesn't feel good. Nobody likes being talked to in that way, of being like yelled at and told that you're a bad person or a demon or Satan or whatever, because that's not the point of this. The point is to co-create a society in a world, and right now we're driving each other apart. We're creating polarization. We don't manage to hold disagreement. And I know it's hard. Like, it is easier to just run away than to stay in it and stay in the discomfort and stay in admitting that, yeah, I was wrong and I don't get it all, or oh shit, now I get it. Daring to let go of control of your own thoughts and your own idea, and that maybe you're wrong, and daring to truly listen. And if we don't manage to listen, but just triggered, why shouldn't the other person be the same? And owning, this internal anger, and managing to sit in it, so that at some point it's possible to talk and not just tell people what to do. I at least believe that this is something we really need to take back, our ability to disagree and have discussions and be annoyed with each other and debate, and dare to let go of some of our beliefs, and realizing that, oh, maybe part of what they're working for is actually some good values. Because I'm seeing that from people and politics that I was very much against, and when I started becoming curious, I realized that actually they have a lot of things that makes sense. Not everything, but part of the politics I can understand, and actually I started adjusting myself by daring to not hold so strongly onto my belief. And it's hard, because it can become an identity, kind of like, this is who I am, and if I let go of that, who am I then? Am I then standing in my integrity when I change my mind? Well, yeah, we do. So breathing into that, breathing into the discomfort of being wrong, the discomfort of having a conversation with someone with belief systems that scare us, and maybe even people that scare us, that trigger our nervous system, people that close us down, but still doing it, not letting people overpower us, but gradually building the skill to actually sit in conversations with people and stand up towards ourselves, but also bringing in curiosity. So when someone shuts you down, to be like, hey, I was talking, what happened? Are you uncomfortable with talking about this? Because that might be the reason why people shut you off. It's actually not that they're just overpowering you, but maybe they're uncomfortable as well with having debates. Maybe they also are very proud. So yeah, being curious about how people behave, and also when things feel scary, to hold the body and be with the body experience of someone else's disagreement, someone else's feelings, someone else's anger, feeling the full intensity of that. And maybe you need to remove yourself. Maybe you just need, in the beginning, to be quiet, but just feeling the body while it's happening and gradually building the resilience in yourself to hold yourself in times of discomfort. So instead of collapsing, instead of people pleasing, instead of just leaving the person and maybe canceling someone, to sit with it and sit with what is going on the inside, because sometimes our triggers isn't actually about the other person, but it's about our past. It's about what we make it mean. And sometimes it's saved in our nervous system. It's a trigger that is then old feelings that are brought up that makes us overreact to the current situation. So maybe what they're saying isn't as scary as your body makes it be. Maybe it's just an inner child of you. That's parts work language, it's therapeutic language, but it's basically a younger version of yourself that experienced something that it felt was overwhelming. And now when someone speaks up, it feels overwhelming, even though the adult you actually can hold this. But it takes a bit of practice to relearning the nervous system that it's safe, but then to start noticing the times that you flee, you avoid, and you even cancel people because of your own discomfort. And you make something like a conversation about something that you disagree about be so big that you cancel a whole person. So basically, you let this one thing consume the whole relationship. And you probably understand when I say this, how sad this is for society when we end up like letting topics become so big that we actually cancel off people. And it's definitely more comfortable, but does it create the society you want to live in? It doesn't for me. Like when we look at the impacts that this has on a global level, on a society, it creates conflict and division and isolation and hate and fear. All of these things is, at least for me, the opposite of what I want. I want a community. I want to see each other. I want people to feel safe being themselves and love themselves and daring to express themselves authentically, even though that might trigger someone. And I'm not talking about talking from, triggers and being a bully, but speaking from your authentic self and expressing yourself. So singing and dancing, and if you want to create something, to create that and bringing out your passion in the world. That is being ourselves. It's not about pointing fingers and blaming people and shaming people. And of course, we also need to to step up and talk about unhealthy dynamics in this world, but not necessarily by pointing fingers, but by being curious about the root cause. What is creating this dynamic? Being curious, how did I create the situation and how did they? And because so often it's actually two people who want to connect, but we're too scared, and therefore a wall and conflict is created. And we're creating walls between each other out of fear. At least creates some stomach ache in me. I think it's sad. So I don't know what the solution is, but yeah. Coming back to our bodies, coming back to our truth, and coming back to connecting with others from the heart, and daring to do that. Yeah, letting down the guard, letting down the need of having control, of being right, of daring to lean in and let people in, and talking and being from the core of ourselves, instead of these walls, these roles, these protection mechanisms that are standing between us. It's kind of sad, really, how we push each other away from each other. just because of our protection mechanisms. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, so landing in our bodies instead. Relaxing our bodies. Feeling into the experience of being us. In meeting other people. And daring to speak our voice from the core of us, from what is alive. I guess like I did now. Daring to be vulnerable. Daring to share what is going on in the body. The intensity. This scares me, so I feel like fleeing. But maybe instead just taking a break. Yeah. And then coming back and saying, I really want to connect, but I don't know how to. I think that's true for a lot of us. I really want to connect, but I don't know how to. It feels scary. I'm afraid of criticism. I'm afraid of doing something wrong. I'm afraid that you won't meet me, that you won't see me, that you will fight back. When I meet you with my heart, I'm afraid that you will meet me with a wall, with harshness, with yelling at me. And still standing in that, being, I want to connect with you. Do you want to connect with me? And doing our best. And also realizing that not everyone is ready for that. We might need to take a lot of steps. But I really believe that that is what we want, to really connect. We just don't know how to. I at least know that I sometimes also don't know how to. And it can be scary. But it feels so good when we manage. Being in the body, being connected, listening, being present, feeling the breath, seeing our surroundings for what it is instead of through a lens of triggers and fear, protection mechanisms. Yeah, that's the journey I want to bring you on. That's the journey I bring people on, to get to the core of the truth and their voice and being present so that you can feel more pleasure. Because pleasure is just being present in the body without all of the mental noise, without the shoulds and need to do and have to do, but just being from the core of us. And yeah, feels good. You can find me on Facebook. I'm Therese Valentin, coaching, facilitation, and talks. I will post the link in the show notes. Also, my podcast, Magefølelsen, aka the Gut Feeling Podcast. I also have a lot of workshops online and in Oslo. You can check them out. I also do coaching. And yeah, I'm just a human being trying to connect. Have a good day.